Hello, I'm Nissa and thank you for joining us today. We're delighted to be partnering with Hurtigruten to bring you an insight to one of the world's most iconic voyages and a style of travel that continues to captivate adventurous travellers year after year. Imagine sailing beneath towering fjords, past colourful fishing villages and rugged mountain peaks, with an ever-changing scenery right outside your window. From the vibrant city of Bergen to the remote Arctic communities above the polar circle, Hurtigruten offers an authentic way to experience Norway's spectacular coastlines and rich maritime heritage. As a proud Hurtigruten partner, Wild Earth can assist with all bookings, availability and current promotions. Our team has also travelled with Hurtigruten firsthand, giving us valuable insight into the onboard experience, itineraries and destinations. If you have any questions after today's presentation or would like help finding the right voyage, we'd love to hear from you. Now let's take a closer look at what makes Hurtigruten and the Norwegian coast such an extraordinary travel experience.
History of Hurtigruten, just to respect where this came from, it is, and I've been using this line quite a bit, it is the world's longest standing example of community-based tourism. And what I mean by that, since 1893, these ships have been used on the Norwegian coast to connect communities that were otherwise absolutely cut off from the rest of Europe. So it enabled pretty much all those communities north of the Arctic Circle to have some way of ferrying their goods and services and their people down south into Bergen and Oslo to connect with the rest of Europe. Prior to 1893, there were no roads, there were no bridges in these areas. And in 1893, of course, Norway didn't exist. It was part of Sweden. So it really has this long-standing history of taking travellers on these ships that offset the cost of delivering goods and services to 34 ports up and down the Norwegian coastline. It's a great history. It's an incredible, and you see it in the people that you meet. And this is, I guess, my most important point about why I'm talking about this history again. It's 130 years of reliable operation, 130 years of safe operation, 130 years of taking Norwegians to show the rest of the world the best of their coastline, but also using the ship as a working ferry to transport goods, services, cars and workers up and down the coast. To that point, it has become part of the fabric of Norway. Those travel experiences obviously develop. So where it used to be back in the day very much a cafeteria experience on board the hotel, which you do see when you visit the ship in a bottle, the Lofoten in Stokmarknes, now it is very much in 2026 an elevated onboard experience with some of the best kitchens in Norway. In fact, our restaurant Rost is on board the Trollfjord and the Midnatt Salt are recognised as two of the best restaurants in Norway, and they're on our ships. So it is that elevated experience across the vessels themselves. It is about trying to innovate in these spaces as well, using things like shoreside power to offset the operation of the engines themselves, using things like marine diesel, which I'll talk a little bit about when we get to the MS Vesteralen. The ships are silent, they're small, they're under 500 people, and they are very elegant in the way that they're designed to encourage people to travel the coast of Norway as we approach zero emissions across the coastline. These are expeditions. They're not expeditions in the sense of throwing a Zodiac in the water and going cruising through these fjords, but the ships themselves are small enough to get into places like the Trollfjord, up into Gvenskafjord, and all those little nooks and crannies up and down the coast. And I have a little slide to share with you shortly that explains why that's such an advantage on these small ships for Norway in particular. Here it is here. As you can see on some of the larger ships that hit Norway, when we compare our ships to theirs, we're looking at one Hurtigruten guest to every 6 guests on a 2,000 person plus ship that heads into the Norwegian coasts. The Germans absolutely love Norway. I got the impression that for a lot of German, Swiss and French travellers, this area is their New Zealand. It's just next door. It's a different culture, and they jump on these massive big TUI ships and AIDA ships and go partying all the way up and down the Norwegian coast. That cruising is not what Hurtigruten's about. With a 4-metre shallow draft on all of the ships that I'm going to show you today, we stay within a kilometre of the coastline the entire way up that coast and going into villages that do not allow or have too shallow a port for the large ships to access. So we do see a lot of those ships heading out off the coast of Norway, lots of sea days, whereas we are sticking in close. Now, I know I'm not telling you anything new here, but that's really where I get that idea of comparing this to the traditional expedition idea of going in and exploring the area itself rather than just moving up and down the coast. And of course, it's stopping in these little ports, sometimes for 15 minutes, sometimes for up to an hour, with activities that will connect you with one port, and then you'll jump back onto the ship in a different port. We'll have a look at what that looks like too today. But it really is about keeping it small, keeping it unique, with an expedition team on board that are Norwegian for Norway. Hurtigruten really is so invested in Norway. It's Norwegianness. We've set ourselves a goal this year to be the #1 experience of Norway, and leaning back into that 130 years of history with the business itself. You really do get a sense on the ships when you're out waving flags as you're coming into ports, being welcomed into small towns and villages where they get to trade their pine, their reindeer skins, their salmon catch, or whatever it is that they need to move up and down the coast. They're always so happy to see Hurtigruten coming back in. And oftentimes the crew themselves are visiting their friends and family while we're in that port. And because you make so many friends on board small ships, you really do connect with those people. So Hurtigruten really is sewn into the fabric of Norway itself. It was one of the things that really stood out to me was this idea of employment. For the team, you've met me before. I'm all about this idea of giving back to these communities to deliver better tourism experiences for our travellers. If we're connecting to people in these destinations and connecting with them so they understand the benefit of travel and tourism, the experience for guests on board is just so much more improved. And so that Hurtigruten commitment to those local communities continues today and will continue on to the future, and it enhances that experience. Hurtigruten is also very involved in the critical coastal infrastructure of Norway, and we got to see a few tests of this. They use it for big storms when they need to move communities away from areas or evacuate areas. These ships are used as the vessels to go and do that. And we are heavily involved in that strategic emergency preparedness of Norway. Sometimes too on our ships, this just happened a week ago, this photo. No, not this photo, but it just happened a week ago. They do these helicopter drops onto the ships while guests are on board as a test of the system for evacuations, medical emergencies, so on and so forth. They're constantly practicing that while you're on the ships themselves. And of course, it is having that knowledge and presence of the Norwegian coast, employing Norwegian people and giving Norwegian people control of their future, to stay working in Norway, to not have to go offshore to alternatives in the shipping industry like those massive big trawling ships, or heading out into the global cruise market. You can work at home, visit your family, and still pursue a maritime career through Hurtigruten, which has such a huge impact on the economy of Norway itself. So when we sort of summarize all of that, where we're sitting at the moment, basically to give you one takeaway line from that introduction to the history of Hurtigruten, it really is the #1 experience of Norway, sewn into the fabric of the flag of Norway, and connecting 34 communities up and down the Norwegian coast with the rest of Europe to bring better economic outcomes for those local communities through the travel industry. There's two different types of expeditions that we can take with Hurtigruten up the Norwegian coast. One is our original voyages with those 7 beautiful identical ships, with the exception of the Vesteraalen, and I'll show you why that's an exception very shortly. But the Hurtigruten, the Nordalis, the Kong Harald, the Polaris, Nord-Norge and Nordkapp are identical vessels, all of which have just gone through a refit to refresh them and upgrade them. And I was lucky enough to jump onto the Polaris to have a look around while she was in port in Trondheim. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a walkthrough video of her shortly, just to show you the quality of the fixtures and the fittings on board. The Vesteraalen is the oldest ship in the fleet. She is what I would actually describe as a more historical museum-style experience. It's sort of her refit that happened last year and this year has upgraded all of the cabins to that fresh new Scandinavian minimalist look, but the restaurant on board itself is only built for 230 people. And it's small, and it's very much based around that 1930s style of luxury cruising. So think staff in white jackets, crystal goblets for dinner, silverware put down, and three-course a la carte dinners every evening. It really is harking back to that historical age of cruising. So the Vesteralen is unique within the fleet for that reason, but still operates as a working ship up and down the coast. And the second style of travel that we're going to talk about today is the signature voyages. These operate on the Trollfjord and the Midnattssol. You'll see the Finnmarken there on your screen. She actually operates in out of the German market. So she's a German language operation dedicated to departures from Hamburg and unavailable, unfortunately, in the Australian and New Zealand market. If you do have guests who are German speakers, obviously we adjust our language for German, Swedish, Norwegian, English, and French on board the ship, depending how many people we have on board. And that means that all notifications will be given in different languages. But for the Finnmarken herself, she is strictly a German language vessel. So great for those German language proficient guests who want to travel with us, however, needs to be booked for the European market. These two ships, the Trollfjord and the Midnattssol, are an upgraded, luxurious, elevated experience that operates slower towards the coast of Norway. So now, instead of spending 15 minutes to an hour in each port, we're only going to visit maybe 10 ports and spend from 5 to 6 hours in each port. It gives us more time to go and check out these cities, spend some more time learning about these places, but also for extended land-based activities off the ships themselves. And I'm going to show you a little bit of the Trollfjord and what she looks like inside. The Midnattssol was refit 2 months ago, and she just went back into the water while I was in Norway, and she was off to Svalbard to go up to New Ellesund and Svalbard itself into Longyearbyen. So I didn't get to see her, but I did get a look into the Trollfjord and what the Trollfjord has to offer. So that's our two basic fleets. Our small signature elevated experiences on board luxury vessels, and then our original coastal voyages, which don't pretend to be luxury, but do have all those fixtures and fittings to give your guests a very comfortable experience up and down the coastline. When we have a look on board the ships as well, these are some of the images off the MS Trollfjord. These are some of the junior suites, and as you can see, they have these beautiful bay windows, extended seating areas, separated sitting areas, and in some cases, some balconies as well. They're very comfy, very cozy, and very Norwegian. So lots of exposed pine, wood, fake reindeer skins on board to give people a nice, comfortable experience while they're sitting in those suites. But we did find ourselves, Mum and I were on board the Vesteralen on a polar outside cabin, which is one of our smaller cabins with a twin setup. And then we paid to upgrade to an Arctic Superior, which I would put up there with any of the cabins that I've experienced in the past with different brands. They really are quite spacious and quite comfortable. The polar outside and polar inside cabins are very much what I would describe as a working room. They have two beds or a double setup with a bathroom and a wardrobe, and that is it. There's no sitting area. They're very small, and they're very much made for people who just want the cabin for somewhere to sleep. We do find for Australian guests and for New Zealand guests that they are looking for a polar outside or Arctic Superior most often. That just gives them a little bit more room, those bigger 32-kilo bags that we tend to bring over from this part of the world to Europe, a little bit more space to unpack our bags, a little bit more space to sit down and look at photos. And of course, for those guests that are looking for a more elevated experience, we have three types of suites. We have our junior suites, our mini suites, and our owner's suites on board all of our vessels. We'll have a look at that shortly, but again, this cabin categorization cheat sheet is another asset that I'll share with you all after our call, so you have that at hand for when guests are looking to choose their cabin to travel on Hurtigruten. The owner's suites on board, the Hurtigruten with the Polarlease, the Nordilease, the Nord-Norge, they all have this idea of space and elegance in mind. Separate sleeping areas for when we're traveling in summertime and we have that pesky midnight sun that's blaring at 3 o'clock in the morning. We can just close our blackout blinds, go off to our bedroom and have that good night's sleep. They are quite spacious. They have that opportunity as well in the owner's suites for those balconies. When we step into our grand suites on the Ricard with and the Nordilease and Polarlease, we have these beautiful bay windows instead of a balcony, plenty of seating areas, and of course those double bed configurations. Now, when it comes to the configurations themselves on board the ship, you'll have this quick reference guide, which I mentioned before, I will share with you, that goes through at a glance, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, and shows you where the position of the rooms themselves and how they can be set up, whether they can be split into a twin or whether they're a double, whether they're a 3-person cabin with a drop-down Murphy bed, or whether they require to be up on deck 5, deck 4, deck 3, so on and so forth. And of course, all even numbers are going to be on the starboard side of the ship, with the odd numbers on the port side of the vessel itself. So I will share that with you, so you've got that quick link to take you through it. When we step down from our larger suites, we step into our mini suites. This, of course, is straight off the Ricard width, and this is one of the mini suites on the Polar Lease. They are just a smaller size of cabin, but still with all that elegant fixtures and fittings, the warm feeling of the carpet, the warm feeling of those fake reindeer skins, as well as having a TV inside to watch the ship as they go by and relax in the evenings. From there, we step down into our Arctic Superior cabins. These are a premium cabin with that little bit of space for Australian and New Zealanders to travel that we mentioned before. But they are very much around that sort of entry-level 3-star to 4-star sort of size of cabin themselves. They're very comfortable. Obviously, the Norwegian style of laying out the beds with that comforter and that foam mattress underneath it. We were quite comfortable in our Arctic Superior and had plenty of room for 2 people as I was traveling with Mum to move around. Then from there, we come down to our Polar outside cabins that I mentioned before, are really the entry level for our Australian and New Zealand travellers. These are on the outside of the vessels with their own windows, natural lighting coming through, and can be organised into either a double or a twin configuration. A word of caution, they are a smaller room, so if you do have those guests who are looking for a little bit more space, they're going to need to start at an Arctic Superior. And then, of course, our entry-level cabins. Now, these Polar insides, I discovered while I was in Norway, are mostly used by our Norwegian friends who are using the ship to travel from port to port for work or for family reasons. So they're generally just a space for a twin bed to use as a sleeping area. They do not have any windows, and they are where our entry-level pricing starts. I would not recommend these for Australian and New Zealand travellers unless they're in Europe for a considerable amount of time, or if they're looking for just the cheapest budget options to jump onto the ships itself. They will be very comfortable, and they're very clean. They're turned down 3 times a day, but size can be an issue for those big bags coming across from Australia and New Zealand. Now, this is in the port of Trondheim. I'm just walking across the dock here just to show you the kinds of docks that we're pulling into in these areas. As you can see, it's a working dock. It's right in the middle of town. We're almost all from here about 1 kilometre away from the city centre itself in Trondheim. So very easy to access. As you can see off to the side here, there's not an enormous amount of security. So you are walking onto the dock and walking straight back off the dock as well. I wanted to show you just the Polar Lease and what she looks like on the inside. This is actually the buffet restaurant set up for breakfast. This is about 7 o'clock in the morning. This is called Briga, which is our bistro experience, which is where most of the buffet service is done for breakfast and lunch, and in some cases dinners as well. As you can see, very well set out, very well laid out, very comfortable. It's quite a nice restaurant, quite spacious, and of course, a great wine selection on board. So there's a lot of elegant culinary offerings for people to accept when they're on board the Polar Lease. And this is the same restaurant layout for the Norderlease, the Kong Harald, the Ricard Witt, the Nord-Norgat, the Norderlease, and the Polar Lease. The exception being, of course, the Vesteralen. This is also some of the areas around the front of the Polar Lease. She's just playing a little bit of sound in the back there. But as you can see, really well laid out. And obviously, a lot of this design came through at a time where the entire fleet, when we were still working with Hurtigruten Expeditions, was updating itself. So there's a lot of common elements that you'll see around the ship with the Fram, the Fridtjof Nansen, the Royal Amundsen, lots of these big bay windows opened up with comfortable seating for people to be able to just take in the fjords as we're traveling forwards on the ship itself. The Vesteralen was the focus I wanted to take for you today as well, just because it's the ship that I've just been on. As you can see down the side here, the Vesteralen is the oldest ship in the Hurtigruten fleet. She was built in 1983 as a working ship. So if you can see, I'll just turn on my little laser here. You can see this sort of part of the back end of the ship here contains most of the accommodation on board the ship and was actually added to the Vesteralen after they launched her. She was launched originally just as a freighting vessel, and then they realized that they were growing in popularity for taking guests up and down the coast. So they actually retrofit her in 1986 and put this unit on the back of the ship itself. And they also installed, as you can see here just at the top, a 360-degree windowed viewing area called the Explorer Lounge. So they kind of retrofit her back into a more comfortable shipping experience in the 80s. She was refit again in 1993 and just refit last year for a third time to update her and bring her into the modern times. The Vesteralen itself offers five different decks for accommodation for our guests. My mum and I were down on deck 2, which is actually the car deck. And I've got to say, folks, even though we were on the car deck itself, it was silent. The ferry operation that happens parallel to the excursions up and down the Norwegian coast is almost invisible. In fact, you could get away with never seeing a car being loaded, a pallet being put onto the ship. It's actually quite tight operationally. You come into the port, the door drops down, they start doing their stuff, and you just wander off into town. So we didn't find we were put out by being down on a lower deck at all. And because we are hugging the coastline, we found it quite a comfortable ship experience as well. So not a lot of rocking in the boats. They do have stabilizers. They use a 2,500 horsepower single screw off the back of the ship itself. So there's not a lot of vibration through the ship. And of course, using that marine oil meant that there was a very comfortable onboard experience overnight with blackout windows on the portholes in our cabin to keep us nice and dark while we were sleeping. This ship would pull into 3 or 4 ports overnight and we didn't even notice it was stopping. It is such a gentle operation. So while they are working ships, they really do pay attention to the comfort on board. And it's something that I have noticed a lot of guests ask, well, if it's a working ship, it must be noisy all night. I'm going to hear anchors dropping. I'm going to hear chains rattling. You don't hear any of that. We're pulling into port, so there's no requirement to drop anchor. These ships are built for this purpose, so they have considered soundproofing the cabins themselves. And the beds being as comfortable and as blackout as you can be really does give you quite a comfortable opportunity down on those lower decks. But of course, once we move up into deck 4 and deck 5, we start finding our upgraded Arctic Superior cabins and our upgraded suites as well. On board the Vesteralen, there are only 3 suites. So she is a little small to have too many of those suites. The vast majority of the cabin accommodation will be polar outside or Arctic Superior cabins. They are really built around this brygge, which is the bistro or cafe on board the ship. And that's where the local Norwegians jump on, hang out. There is a gift store in here, a little play area for the kids. And then just around the corner here from the gym and fitness center, you'll find the Hurtigruten Museum, which again on the Vesteralen really leans into that historical side of Hurtigruten and where they came from. You also have Restaurant Torget, and on the Vesteralen, we only have 1 restaurant, which is very different to the other ships that we spoke about on the original coastal route, which do have 2 restaurant options and a fine dining option, as well as that brygge bistro and bakery service on board. So it is a little more limited in the areas that you can dine in, but the food is very much that Norwegian food, and I'll show you what that looks like very shortly. And then, of course, we have the Trollfjord Lounge, which is forward of the vessel itself, looking out from the front, before we head up into the observation deck and the very top of the ship where we find the Explorer Lounge, which is the Vesteralen version of the 1893 bar, the Explorers Club. So yes, of course, built in the 83, but refurbed in 2025 with a top speed of nearly 18 knots, which puts her on par with most other vessels of a similar size. So it's very quick, it's very nimble, and very much a comfortable experience. On board the vessel itself, I'm just going to take you through some pictures. These are all from the Vesteralen, by the way. These are some photos of the suites. As I mentioned, there's 3 of these on board. There's that massive big fake reindeer skin. You can always tell the fake reindeer skins because they're stitched together. Of course, being a sustainable operator, we do trade with the Sami people, and we encourage people when they're going into these areas, if they wish to buy a reindeer skin, to consider their country's rules around bringing such things back home. But there are plenty of these faux fur initiatives that can be used on board the ship to still give you that Norwegian feeling without forcing an animal to give up its fur. These rooms themselves have just been recarpeted as well. I definitely noticed how fresh and new that felt underfoot. It was very comfortable, and of course these suites are quite spacious with that separate sitting area and that view off the Vesteralen herself. When we step down into our Arctic Superior cabins, these can be set up many different ways on board, either as twins or as triples, and of course as double configurations. They still have that idea of that Scandinavian minimalism to them. So there's a lot of exposed pine veneer, spacious sitting areas around the bed areas themselves. The bathrooms on board are quite tight. I'll be very honest about that. So if we do have guests with mobility issues who need a little bit more space in their bathrooms, the Vesteralen does offer 2 cabins that are accessible cabins for that exact purpose. And they are both on the 3rd floor or on the 3rd deck of the ship itself. If you do have those guests that are concerned about mobility, we invite them and encourage them to come and join us. We'll just have to make sure that that specific mobility cabin is available for them at the time they want to go. Point out, these are our polar outside cabins. Again, set up for twin or double configurations. Again, a smaller room themselves. Before we step down again, one more time into those polar inside cabins. Now, these photos here, guys, I just want to give you the feel. This is the theme when you're on board the Vesteralen. Hark your mind back, and this is, again, very important for this specific ship. We need to remind guests that the Vesteralen is a historic ship. The team on board for food service all get dressed up in those white jackets. Think 1930s style cruising. Think the original Queen Elizabeth II. That whole idea of days gone by with the white service jackets, the menus printed on your table every night, crystal gobletware on board the tables for lunch and for dinner, and silver service for meals with an amuse-bouche, an entree, a main, and dessert. It really is that old school 1930s style of service. The ships themselves do not suffer for lack of wine, for lack of spirits and cocktails. And of course, all throughout the vessel itself, it's been very tastefully updated to feel clean, accessible, and usable and functional. This photo that you see here is of the Explorer bar on the roof of deck 7. And as you can see, covered in windows on the roof itself for the Northern Lights and off to the side. Very spacious area with its own bar and cocktail bartender. Great space to get out of the wind to really take in Norway while you're relaxing. And then all these little touches around the ship that hark back to the old days of luxury voyaging. That postal service on board the ship itself, menus printed for that silver service in the bar, and of course that white jacket service across the crew while we're sitting on a working vessel and delivering goods and services up and down the coast. So for the final part of my presentation, folks, I just want to go through and just give you a reminder of what exists in the programs themselves. Obviously, there are the 2 key styles of travel, the original voyages, 34 ports, coming from Bergen up to Kirkenes, back down to Bergen, local ingredients from Norway's coastal kitchen, lovely rooms on board, and plenty of common areas and spaces for people to get out and exploring. The signature voyages slow all of that down. We may stop at 6 to 15 ports. We're going to spend more time in those areas. And of course, we're going to have that elevated onboard food experience as well as those fine dining experiences. So realistically, those original voyages are that entry-level program on the coast, and Signature is that elevated, upgraded cruising experience. Signature also operates our Svalbard line, which I guess is very important for Wild Earth. Hurtigruten Svalbard runs the Funken Lodge in Longyearbyen. We operate a lot of the services in Longyearbyen as well. And we also have the small 130-person Serenissima, which is a small expedition vessel, which we'll talk about more in August. It's not for today's conversation. I know you guys are familiar with the Svalbard operation. Our big operational capacity here is obviously the ability to now take up to 1,000 people a week across to Svalbard. And they're all going to be joining that on those signature vessels, the MS Trollfjord and the MS Midnatt Sol. And of course, we have the North Cape line, which goes in up to Tromsø and then back again, and the Coastal Express cruises that we've spoken about already. Just in a nutshell, and this again is a sheet that I'm going to share with you as a resource to go to that just talks about the key 5 voyage offerings that we have. A Svalbard line, the North Cape line in winter, the North Cape line in summer, all falling under our signature voyages categories, and then our original Coastal Express Bergen to Kirkenes to Bergen, or our Coastal Express port-to-port services, where we can just take guests on a 2 or 3 day shorter trip across that coastline. It just goes through how long they are, how long the expeditions are, what excursions, all at a glance. So I'll share this with you as our 3rd resource for today's catch-up. But those original voyages, I'm not going to get too much into this. We've been talking a lot about it, but we're starting in Bergen, we're finishing in Kirkenes, we're including an opportunity to head up to Hammerfest and out to the North Cape. We're taking people down to Tromsø, heading into Finnsnes and Stokmarknes, which is the birthplace of Hurtigruten, where we find the Hurtigruten Museum and the ship in the museum itself, and then down into across the Arctic Circle, heading into Brønnøysund and up into the Trollfjords. It really is quite a great way as well to see Lofoten and heading into places like Svolvær and Stamsund, where we get to cross all the roads that sort of gather around Lofoten and connect that area itself. My favourite was down outside of Kristiansand, where you get off and go and do the Atlantic Road, which is a great drive. So there's a lot of activities that can be done, and we're looking at combinations of 12, 7 and 6 days on those original coastal routes. Those signature voyages as well, I think we've spoken quite a bit about that, but I just wanted to show you what the Trollfjord looks like on board. We've had a look at the Vesteralen, we've had a brief look at the Polar Lease, but on the Trollfjord and the Midnatt Sol, which has just been relaunched, you have that really comfortable upgraded experience. You have that opportunity then to get into a beautiful suite. This is one of the owner's suites. Gym facilities, sauna experiences, and obviously everything from a polar inside upwards. So they're very, very comfortable. The Trollfjord herself has those 3 different dining options. We have the restaurant called Rost, Torget, which is the main restaurant on board the ship, and then we have the Riga Bistro and Pizza Kitchen as well. But the food offerings in this is Rost on board the Trollfjord is very much that elevated experience, fine dining, think degustation with paired wines. This is eminently suitable for those silver seas, those scenic clients, those Ponant clients who are looking for a really elevated experience on their Norwegian coastline. And all of the food that they serve in that restaurant is coming from 50 kilometres of the ports that we're working in. So it is as Norwegian as the food can get. When we're on those signature voyages, folks, just as a brief reminder, they are all inclusive. So they include breakfast, lunch and dinner, all of your drinks, beer, wines and alcohol, unlimited tea and coffee. And of course, they include a few little activities on board the ship, such as ringing in the Trollfjord with a little cup where we get everybody a little bit of a rum and take a little bit of an experience out on the deck. And of course, crossing the Arctic Circle, everybody will receive an exclusive silver spoon as well. So it is quite a cool experience with just those little touches to really impress and surprise people while we're traveling. And of course, a larger expedition team on board those signature voyages. So we have 9 members of our expedition team. They're there to take out those daily shore excursions, going to check out the areas around Lofoten and Trondheim as we're checking down. And of course, professional photography on board these signature voyages. So we have a onboard photographer to help people with their cameras, but also an app where they can download shared photos from everybody on board. And of course, you have the Northern Lights promise. So during winter time, so operating between September and March, if we do a signature voyage and we don't see the Northern Lights at all, we promise to offer your guests a free 6-day voyage on our original coastal voyages to extend their stay to give themselves another chance to see the Northern Lights. Happens very rarely, but it is there to just give people confidence. Now, the signature voyages themselves are limited to the Svalbard line, heading out from Bergen up to Tromsø and then heading across to Svalbard herself. We also offer the North Cape line where we come out of Oslo and head all the way up to Honiksvag in the North Cape, and then head back down, finishing up in Oslo. Both of those expeditions will be that more upgraded experience. This year, we also included on the signature voyage select departures on the Inner Fjords Explorer. So the Inner Fjords Explorer specifically is sticking more around the south of Allison and Christiansen. And of course, you have your Arctic Circle Explorer as well as your experiences more further to the north. This Inner Fjords Explorer has been incredibly popular, folks. It's only 8 days, 6 ports. We're looking at around $1,000 a day to get into one of those Arctic Superior cabins per person, all inclusive, and heading right up into the Hardanger Fjord. So you've seen the Trolltung, heading up into Nordfjord and then down into Sognefjord as well. So this really is that southern Norwegian classical experience of food, dining, and exploring those beautiful dramatic fjords. The Arctic Circle Explorer has been incredibly popular recently, particularly in wintertime. So departures heading out from January, February, March, and April every year. And the idea is that we're spending more time above the Arctic Circle to maximize opportunities to see the Northern Lights. And then finally, the Arctic Line heading all the way out of Copenhagen for that cheaper inbound flight and departure flight, and then finishing up in Tromsø, which is just a jump back down to Oslo or Bergen to fly back into Europe. These are all developed as ways to give people alternative options for arrival and departure ports. But again, this is that wintertime experience on the Arctic Line North, stopping in at all those little ports, but always in pursuit of the Northern Lights. So folks, just to finish off, I just want to remind you that we also do these cruise and tour packages. So when we take these Arctic lines north and south, they also combine with our signature series in a program called Savour the Lights. This has been one of our most successful packages to go into the market. We've just released departure dates into 2027 and 2028, and we're going to jump on that Arctic line north from Oslo, jump off in Tromsø in a small group of 24 people, and head down in 5-star accommodation all the way down through Finland itself. Hello. Then, no, you're right. Is that Uber Eats?
Sorry, keep going, that's fine.
So the final word for you today to finish off, guys. Obviously, Hurtigruten for a long time has been one of the world's most popular choices for the Northern Lights. For Australians, this is really driving, I'd say about 80% of our inquiry is based between those September through to March periods. And it's considerable at the moment. As you folks would know, we are at perihelion. We're as close to the sun as we've been for nearly 25,000 years. And our Earth and wobble is moving closer to the sun at the moment. So every 11 years, we get a lot of Northern Lights. Every other 11 years, we get a little bit less of the Northern Lights. At the moment, it's absolutely powerful. There was one night we were in Bergen where you could just kind of see the lights with the sun still out, which was quite impressive. But we have, over a 12-day voyage, multiple opportunities to get people out there in the darkness to see those Northern Lights. And of course, heading across to Svalbard really maximizes that opportunity as well. The Northern Lights themselves are really active at the moment because of the amount of coronal mass ejection that we've had interacting with the magnetosphere. But these are some photos that came off the ship this year, just as recent as March, towards the end of the season, when we were getting really big, strong pink southern lights in New Zealand and Tasmania and Melbourne. These were the images they were getting up there. In fact, they got the dancing lights. Now, the dancing lights have not been seen in the Northern Hemisphere for quite some time. So realistically, what all of that means, I think, is over the next 5 to 6 years, we can pretty much guarantee the Northern Lights are going to be active during the winter months. We can walk right up to the front door of guaranteeing it with the Northern Lights promise as well. But look at some of these images are just taken with iPhones, folks. It really is quite remarkable. And of course, the expedition team are on board to really guide people through those viewings. And if we don't see the Northern Lights, we'll give them a free 6-night expedition to get back out there and see it again. And finally, the Follow the Lights is our more original coastal voyage heading out of Oslo across Norway in a nutshell, which is that famous 3-day trip to Flum, across the Flum Railway, up into Voss, this beautiful gorges, around the area before jumping into the ship in Bergen, heading all the way up into Kirkenes before jumping off in a small group of 16 to 24 people, and then heading down into Saari Selka, Sinetta, Rovaniemi. We're going dog sledding, we're going king crab hunting, we're looking for the Northern Lights, we're on snowmobiles, we're out into the glass igloos of Saari Selka, always looking for the Northern Lights. So these are great ways to increase opportunities for people to see those Northern Lights. And I believe that Kate may have been speaking to you guys about potentially putting together a group on Follow the Lights to sell through Wild Earth. But that might be a conversation that we need to have after this catch up this morning. The way that operates, I will break this down to you. I'm not going to take you through the 14 days of the trip itself, but essentially it's a classic coastal cruise combined with that land opportunity to engage with the Sami people, the indigenous people of Scandinavia, to get out there and see the reindeer, to get all toasty and warmed up underneath those fake furs and blankets to watch the Northern Lights. It's all built around giving people as many opportunities as possible to really engage with their purpose for being in this part of the world, which is to see the Northern Lights. And of course, we can also operate that southbound. So we can start in Estonia, head across to Helsinki, and then head all the way around to Bergen.